Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Praetor Magic. My name is DM Cross, and I'm your host. Wow, we should take two this one. I'm your host, DM Cross, for this episode of Reflections of the Council. This is our live podcast that we do every Monday on twitch.tv/Praetor Magic. I'm joined by Frexian the Hidden and Magical Hacker. I'm going to go with Frexian first because Hacker pisses me off. So, Frexian, how you doing?
I agree. And I'm doing great. It's been a great night.
See, look,
Already.
this is what happens.
Already, he's got me with emergency powers. He's got you with Nexus of Fate, and here he is.
This is what happens when we have pre-stream conversations about rulings. Hacker, I don't actually care, but how are you?
Hey, Dylan Bond is the Sylar, aka Gabriel Gray in Heroes of the MTG multiverse. Don't at me.
Actually, I saw that on Twitter. I kind of agree with that one. For those of you who don't know, Sylar was like the character that basically wanted to like open people's heads up and see how their brain worked, because that's how he stole their power. And Dylan Bond seems like he's a creepy guy.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's one too many fingers for me. That's for sure.
All right, that's just awkward. That's prejudice, actually. Why you gotta hate against extra fingers? There's human beings with extra fingers and toes, but that is not our topic tonight. Tonight we're actually going to be talking about what are you missing, Hacker?
Extra fingers and toes.
Missing those extra 2 fingers and toes.
The right ruling on Nexus of Fate. What we're talking about is what we're missing. All of us are missing when it comes to building our commander decks. This topic is an interesting one because I immediately thought of things that I was missing personally whenever I go to build my decks, and things that I always have to go back and check. But it's going to be based kind of on our personal experience. Obviously, we're 3 guys who just play a lot of Magic, so I do want to put the disclaimer up that this isn't based on any kind of like generated stats or anything like that. It's just kind of what we see, whether it's in 3DH, Hacker, you play your games on MTGO for your YouTube channel, so you're going to have your breadth of experience there. Right. I've been playing the format for 5-6 years now, and I've played it in different countries all around the world with different people all around the world. So hopefully I'll be able to have some kind of insight onto things that I think people might be missing. But I'm not going to go first. Completely off topic, and late, but happy anniversary to DM Cross and Danny. Yeah, thank you. It was our anniversary yesterday. We couldn't get a sitter, so it was It was all right.
It was a kid anniversary.
Yeah, it was a kid anniversary. Considering our oldest kid is about as old as our marriage, yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. So we'll go with Hacker, since again you do have that probably more recent breadth of experience. Although I don't know how many 3DH games Frexian plays every day, but we know he builds a new deck every 5 minutes. I don't know if he plays a new game every hour or anything like that. So.
I've been on a hiatus from both for about 2 or 3 weeks.
I know. I haven't seen you in stream for like 2 weeks either.
Yeah.
And that's why you get to go last. Anyway, Hacker. So what do you when you're playing games, what do you think you notice people are not having in their games? Whether it's Oh, thank you for the 100 bits, Cross. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Is it card draw? Is it ramp? Is it answers? Is it removal? Is it res?
There's a lot of things. Honestly, for me, it kind of feels like a little bit of everything, but the one I want to talk about first is specifically board wipes, but a special type of board wipe. Board wipes that hits things that aren't creatures too. So everybody knows about Cyclonic Rift, and I think a lot of people really enjoy Hour of Revelation as well. These are both great cards that will let you, get rid of people's artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers. They're both great for that. But I feel like if somebody's not in the colors that they immediately think to mind has answers in those colors, they end up not running any at all. And so I think that's kind of a big issue. I'm not saying that every green deck needs to play Bane of Progress, which is a creature that can destroy all artifacts and enchantments. But what I am saying is, when you're looking at the board wipes you want to put into your deck, kind of pick a good number for the total number of board wipes, like maybe 4 or something, and then have at least one of them be something that can hit all non-land permanents. Because if you're in a situation where it's you and 2 other players struggling against that 4th player who's just got way too much stuff out, and it's not just creatures, it's like crazy artifacts, crazy enchantments, they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. You want to have something that can reset the board back to 0. So that's the one thing I would say is board wipes that can hit all non-land permanents, or maybe at least choose kind of like a austere command or merciless eviction. Both of those I think are pretty cool. What do you guys think? Do you guys see enough people playing these types of board wipes that can take care of non-creatures as well?
I'm gonna let Phyrexian go first since he's going last for other things.
Yes and no. Like, I feel like in 3DH, I feel like I see people running these plenty, but in other formats I play, I don't see it as much. Because, like, at least the people I build 3DH decks with, they tend to, like, austere command is an auto include if you're playing white, and merciless eviction is an auto include if you're playing, Boros. And I think people know, like, some of these very good board wipes. Like, Hour of Revelation, you mentioned, it's kind of hard to play unless you're crazy like you and play mono white, because the triple white is a hard cost. Yeah. So, unless
you're not casting...
even
you're not casting on turn 3.
Well, I know, but even in double colors, if white isn't your primary color, like even just like if you're playing Azorius, if white isn't your primary, if you're playing primarily blue with a white splash, you can't really run Hour that well. But just your mana base doesn't allow for it.
Did you say primary blue with a white splash, or did you say primary white with a blue splash?
It's primary blue with a white splash.
What if you do run primary white with another color splash?
Then I think you could run Hour in that deck or in mono white. But so certain ones of the board wipes are just hard to run for that reason. Certain board wipes are just so expensive. Like even Ugin, like he's a board wipe that hits everything that doesn't that has colors, and that he's 8 mana to cast, which in Commander is a lot easier to do. But and then you've also got to run the side of these board wipes. Like, one thing I like to do with my board wipes a lot of time is run board wipes, not only that hit everything, but like run board wipes that don't hit my things. Like run board wipes that actually give you advantage rather than just having to reset the board. Yeah, it's fine if you're behind, then having a board wipe that resets the board is fine. Like the reason Cycryph is so good is because it resets everybody else and leaves you alone. And the reason, like, and even like if you're playing like a small weenie deck, like stuff like Consume the Meek and stuff like that are a lot better than some of your other options. I think it's Consume the Meek.
Yeah.
Or just a lot of really cool or stuff like that. It's one.
Yeah. Slaughter the Strong is a personal favorite.
Consume the Meek is a instant 3 black. Destroy each creature with converted mana cost 3 or less that can't be regenerated. Or are you talking about the white one?
That one works too, but that's just a different, like, it's on a different side. If you're playing big stuff, then this gets rid of all the small stuff. I had the wrong one.
Okay.
I mean, it's in the same vein. It's in the same vein of wipes that
you're trying to hit basically the stuff that you're not really playing, so it doesn't hurt you.
The stuff that you're not really playing, so it doesn't hurt you as badly. Yeah. Like Hose is a token deck or like a weenie deck.
Yeah. I think. I don't know. I see. Actually, in most of the games that I play, and maybe it's because a lot of times I'm the one packing them, but board wipes and wrath effects are just like one of the most common things I think I see. I don't think I run any deck that doesn't have at least 3 or 4, which I know some people say is low, but when everybody's running 3 or 4 and wiping the field fairly consistently, and then there are certain colors that can bring your spells back up. I'm thinking like blue with splashing white or black or whatever. So you have access to ways to get your instants and sorceries back. I feel like board wipes are actually one of the things that I didn't even think of. And in terms of the whole don't hit board wipes that don't hit the non-creatures and non-lands, again, I feel like that's pretty common in what I see. I can't think of a lot of green decks that don't run Beast Within or Reclamation Sage or Acidic Slime or some combination of the 3.
Yeah.
Obviously, some colors just have problems with things. For 3DH, Chaos Warp was too expensive for a while to run a lot, so like mono red decks had a really hard time running. I mean, getting rid of anything that wasn't a creature, or a player. So I don't think I see it as much. Maybe it is because it's 3DH and maybe those like key pieces get onto the board and they kind of like turn the game around. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So by the time the game is over, it's like, oh well, you don't think about it because it ended after that happened.
Yeah, yeah. It's also, I think, probably a little bit easier to not miss these key pieces in 3DH because a lot of things are just not available to you, and so you have a lot more space in your deck to put a lot of things. And sometimes you'll get to the point and you're like, well, I would sure love to have a way to be able to blow up all enchantments in my Rakdos deck for like
Yeah.
less than 5 mana. So I guess I'll play Boom Pile. You know, it is 26 cents though, so I guess that's probably a little bit more expensive.
You're the only one who likes Boom Pile that much.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I am, but it's the only
I-
thing
I-
that's in colorless that can do that for that cheap of a mana. Well, Nevin Rose Disc, it's 5 mana and you have to wait a turn. Boom Pile can do it right away.
Can. Maybe.
Can, yeah.
yeah,
If you're
can.
lucky. Or it sits there and gets removed because you lost the flip.
Yeah, that's true with
yeah.
Nevin Rose Disc too, yeah.
I do want to point out, so Puffs in the chat, who is John from the Magic Online Commander League / one of the other Predators, mentions that he runs more wipes than he does ramp, and so does Danny being my wife. That's probably another good point of why I don't think too much about this one when we come up to this topic, is because Danny is the mono white queen, and she loves blowing up the board. She doesn't like people to have fun, so that's probably another reason why I don't think board wipes when I think of what people are missing, because I have a player who actively likes to wipe the field anytime it basically threatens her.
Yeah, yeah.
Does Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos count as control? Yes.
I'd say so in the right deck, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just putting it willy-nilly into any deck that has black and not... If you're not actually, like, intent on sacrificing things and purposely building, like, sacrifice outlets in, then no. But if you are doing those things, if you're doing a mono black deck and you're aristocrats, then yeah, of course it's control, because you basically make it impossible for people to play creatures.
Yeah, and if you're but if you are just throwing them in like, oh, I have creatures and they're gonna die, and then when they die, I just want my opponents to lose creatures for them dying, then no. It does have to be part of a concerted strategy.
Equal to a board wipe. Again, it depends on the deck, because if you have the right kind of deck, it's actually better than a board wipe, because you sacrifice the things that you don't need, or like your tokens, and everybody else loses their field while you keep something.
Like my 3DH Indrik Sar deck, when it actually finds lands, it drops a Dictator or Grave Pact, and I mean, you're just literally, I have that in a sack outlet, and like nobody's gonna have a board full of creatures except me, and I'm gonna have giant creatures, and you're eventually going to die to that.
Well, I mean, that deck only runs 4 lands last time I checked, so.
Apparently, the last couple of times I played it, I even played it in a game off stream after that, and it still only found like 4 or 5 lands, and I was just like miserable.
Yeah, well, run more lands.
That's how it happens.
Running 38.
Run 50.
Gosh, that's too many. I don't want to have all the lands all the time.
Then you'll be flooded.
Need some spells.
Yeah.
So when I came up, well, not when I came up with this topic, when I thought about this topic, the first thing that I thought about was, what don't I include the most of? Because I wanted to basically, that was the easiest thing to think of, is what do I miss? And it's actually Frexen who's told me this before. When I first make a deck, I tend to not pack as much of card advantage as I should. And I've noticed in games where I've stalled out when I don't have enough cards in hand. And it also got me thinking that I will run less of whatever my commander supplies. What I mean by that is, so for instance, I have my Lord Windgrace deck. And Lord Windgrace is an engine in the deck where he very quickly draws you cards by discarding lands, and then later on you can get them back or whatever. But because he is such a draw engine himself, I noticed in my first iterations that I didn't have as much card draw. I was like, oh, well, when I get my commander out, then I'm going to start drawing cards and it won't matter. Even if it gets removed once, you know, I'm going to draw enough cards for it to equal out. But then you have to realize that, like, oh, well, there's such a thing as blue, and there's counterspells, so I can play my commander and not even get them, which means I never even have a chance to try to balance out the fact that I'm not running enough card advantage. So that's kind of something. When I did my crop deck, I started realizing that I didn't have enough actual sack outlets, because I expected him to sacrifice most of my creatures, again, for the value of drawing cards. So, like, my first iteration of the deck, I went back and looked, I'm like, oh, I'm missing, like, a lot of things that I really do need in the deck in order for it to run properly, and I had to go back and, like, shift things around. And then, as far as for other people, Grave Hate, I play in a, you know, I have a couple different groups between 3DH, playing with the Praetors, and just people that I've played with in paper back in South Carolina, and having developed from the guy who originally ran Big Tesa, Token Deck with Trostani, and Merkle Vosk Mill to being a graveyard player, I like even myself sometimes don't run enough grave hate because for me like grave hate, like I don't want to hate on graves, especially if it's symmetrical, but like people in my metas just don't run it enough at all. It's I think Reanimator is probably one of the strongest strategies in Magic, probably up there with Control, in my opinion. So if you're not doing something to disrupt both of those, you're probably going to lose a lot of time to them. So that's what I see a lot. Because when I start doing graveyard stuff and nobody stops me, I kind of like look around and I'm like, I mean, okay, I'm going to keep doing the thing if you're going to keep letting me do the thing. Like, this is fine for me. But,
yeah, like,
even in 3DH, there's been a couple people who like come by with like black decks and they're like, oh, I'm not running Bajuka Bog. And I'm like, oh, you're crazy. So, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
Well, I have to agree with you. I think maybe I run a little bit low on the graveyard hate myself, because I don't play Bajuka Bog in my black decks either. Instead, I play Scavenger Grounds instead.
But why not just Bajuka Bog? Like, why
Well,
not
not
both?
both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a limited space for utility lands. Oftentimes it's like, well, I could run the Bajuka Bog, but then I wouldn't be able to play like Phyrexian Tower in an Aristocrats deck. And I'm like, I already have one for Graveyard Hate. And I do like Scavenger
Bajuka
Grounds
Bog just
more.
goes in as a slow swamp.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes in as slow basic because it still taps for black. It's not like it's one of your utility lands that taps for colorless.
Yeah.
So it still taps for black. It still does the thing. It's a slow land. It's like playing a Guild Gate.
That's right, cross. The Animator is strong and more fun than Control. You're damn right. And I play both. Sometimes together with my Sultai deck, but whatever. But yeah, I don't think, even for people who run like just the one, like just Scavenger Grounds or just Bajuka Bog, I still think that's not enough. When recently with Danny and building for the Magic Online Commander League, I don't have to, but she asked me to help her do the actual purchasing of the deck to get it into Commander, or to get it into Magic Online, because I just do it quicker, because I do it so often through 3DH and giveaways and stuff like that, where she only does it really when we do the episodes. So she'll ask me to do it, and I'll look over the list real quick, and I'll be like, hey, can I make some suggestions? And she'll be like, okay, what? Like, yeah, put in Grave Hate. And she'll look at me like, why? I'm like, because I like graveyard stuff. And I'm part of your meta, and if there's black in my deck, I bet you I'm going to bring something back, and it's going to be the thing that kills you if you don't find a way. So, like, I try to kind of encourage her to play more, because she doesn't normally think about it because it's not a strategy, and I think that's what a lot of it is too, right? People don't play graveyard strategies all the time, so you don't think about it all the time.
And you say that, but I really don't think that's true. Because I can't think of a deck that I build that doesn't have some way to recur things from the graveyard. Even in like mono white, you have a Maria Shepherd. I mean, which whenever you play planes, return target permanent from the battlefield.
Graveyard to the battlefield.
To the battlefield. Or any land just gets, right back to your hand. So, I mean, even in mono white, you've got recursion from the graveyard. So, like, in green, you have your recollect, regrowth, eternal witness effects. In blue, you have your Archaeomancer and return instants and sorceries. So every color has a way to return things from the graveyard. So it's not just black. Black does it a lot, and black does it a lot with creatures. But every color has a way to do it.
Yeah, but it's a matter of if you focus on it. Having a spare effect, like again, the Archaeomancer, having the spare effect that just gets you your Cyclonic Rift back. So you can use it again, so that the one time you use it isn't like, oh, I use it, if I don't win, I'm going to die. It's not playing a graveyard deck.
Until they combine it with Deadeye Navigator, and then they have the soft lock on the game where they just cycle it through over and over again, right?
Yeah, but that's still not a graveyard deck. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. If people don't run
it's not a graveyard deck, but having a way to get rid of that card once it's in the graveyard is still useful. I mean, it's why I advocate for things, even targeted like graveyard removal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I'm just thinking about the other person's perspective. Because again, I think about it because I run graveyard strategies, and I know what. So if I were to sit down across the table from you, as we've done before, if I think my deck doesn't have graveyard hate, I think I'm in trouble. It doesn't matter what you're playing. But
Yeah.
let's say somebody in the chat who doesn't think of that. I'm trying to think from their perspective of why they don't. And the only thing I can think of is that they don't use the graveyard enough on their own to think that it's that dangerous to let it go off.
Maybe.
That's all I'm saying. I'm agreeing that it has to happen, and I'm not saying that it's okay to not happen or whatever. If I said it wrong or if it came out wrong, whatever. But I think that's just where the mentality starts. Is I'm not playing a graveyard deck, so I don't really think about it when I make my deck because I'm making my deck for what I want to do, and not always to necessarily have answers for all the things that could be done. You need to still run though. You need that's what we're trying to get people to think about here is. Even if you don't think about graveyards in your deck, somebody else might be at your table. Especially, again, if you have a big meta where there's graveyard players. Hey, here I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, what do you guys think about there's some cards that could be considered graveyard hate in the right situation, but for other situations, they don't really work. Like, for example, against a Sidisi deck, Mimic Vat's not going to do anything. But against a Aetherios deck, it will be pretty good.
I don't know.
I don't count Mimic Vat as graveyard hate ever.
Yeah. Mimic Vat's a token maker. It's for ETBs.
Yeah.
I mean, it shuts off Undying, it shuts off Persist, all that good stuff.
Coincidentally, though.
Yeah.
If that's why you're running Mimic Vat.
If I'm running Mimic Vat in my deck, I'm running it to abuse something in my own deck. I'm not really running it to hurt someone else. I'm running it because I want to do my Sidisi Undead Vizier 100 times in a row with Mimic Vat.
Right.
Or my Runescar Demon with 100 times in a row with Mimic Vat. Or even my Acidic Slime over and over again and just start blowing up any relevant land I want to blow up.
Yeah.
Something like that. I'm not really looking for it to hose somebody. If it happens to do that, that's icing on the cake. But it's not the reason I put that card in a deck.
Yeah, you're not running that as like when we talk about categorizing things out, right? We talk about like you have to have X amount of your 8x8, right? So your ramp, your draw, your rest, your removal, etc. Graveyard hate is another category in there that people don't think about nearly often enough. Even if again you only have like 2 effects. And again, like Bajuka Bog and Scavenger Grounds are really good ones because a lot of the times you're going to run land hooters anyway. So now even though that doesn't count as a redundant effect, it's a way to find the effect if you need it.
Yeah, I was just saying sometimes I think of like the best graveyard hate is the cards that do stuff when you don't have a graveyard deck at the table, right? Because, you could always draw into a Relic of Progenitus and sure, cycle it away. It's not so bad. But if you were to draw into something like a Tormod's Crypt, and there's nobody at the table that's really going to be doing anything that scary with their graveyard, sure, maybe they'll have some recursion that it'll work against that, but there's not really a big reason to be devoting a whole card slot to it. It's going to feel a little bit bad. Maybe Burn Away is another example. Do you really want to be paying 5 mana for an instant speed thing that deals 6 damage because it exiles all cards from the controller of that creature's graveyard?
I think at that point you're running it for the I think at that point you're putting it in a burn deck, not necessarily to be graveyard hate. It's a secondary effect.
I'm very fine with running Tormod's Crypt or like Nihil Spellbomb or something like that. Too. I don't feel bad having those hit the table and just affect the game state until someone does something about them.
Well, Spellbomb also allows you to draw a card when you use it.
So I'm fine with playing out a Tormod's Crypt and just letting it sit there and saying, okay, who wants to try to get something out of their graveyard?
Yeah.
Who wants to force me to use this? And then if someone forces to use it, hey, they're looking to do something.
Yeah. I do want to point out DB Cross says Kalatas is more graveyard hate than Mimic Bat, and I want to also point out Anafenza the Foremost, which is a really great card that does so Anafenza and Kalatas as well are 2 good cards that do other things and then have a line of grave hate. Anafenza being a 4 mana human soldier for 3 mana, green, white, and black, says whenever she attacks, put a 1/1 counter on another target tapped creature you control. Tap, not attacking, so it could be because this obviously went from Concept to Jakir where Outlast was the thing. If a creature would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile instead. So that line of text makes her really strong against graveyards, but like you don't necessarily run it. Like you don't feel bad if you put your Anafenza deck out and everybody's running tokens and no recursion whatsoever. You don't really care because she has a bunch of other upsides, and so does Kalitas as well, who I cannot spell.
Jiggles my puffs here gets really upset about Anafenza here.
Well, I mean, it's true. If you see an Anafenza player at the table, and like if I'm running Sabra, Queen of the Golgari, which has a lot of recursion in it, like my infinite loop on how to win the game with Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat is based on being able to put something into my graveyard and pull it back out. For the ETB, for the tokens, so that I can keep sacrificing stuff to get more treasure tokens and more mana from Phyrexian Altars in order to be able to basically keep doing that over and over and over again. So if I see Anafenza or if I see Kalitas, where he also has, if a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, instead exile that card and get a zombie out of it. So this is even more upside because Anafenza just messes with creatures dying. This messes with creatures dying, but also gives you something back. You know what I mean? But yeah, if I were to see a Kalitas or an Anafenza on the other end of the table with Sabra, I'd be like, shit, I can't let that stay on the field because otherwise then I can't play the game the way that my deck is intended to. And enough exile effects or enough turns of exiling my stuff goes by, and I'm shot.
And I guess it also shuts down the Grave Pact ways to try to remove Anafenza, unless you're like sacrificing tokens. Because I guess if you sacrifice tokens, it would work. But
nope, they exile instead.
Well, it says on Anafenza if a non-token creature an opponent it says a non-token creature an opponent owns would die, or a creature card not on the battlefield will be put into an opponent's graveyard. I'm looking at the Oracle text. It's probably it's really different from the.
If it would die, exile instead, which means you never get the dying trigger. It's a replacement effect.
Yeah.
So grave pact effects don't even help you.
Yeah.
And again, even more reason, because in a sacrifice deck, you're going to grave pact in order to keep the field clear, but you can't even do that because everybody's awful and wants to print awful cards. I mean, wait.
It would still work though if you're sacrificing tokens, so tokens would die. Yeah. So there's one way to keep Anafenza off the battlefield. Just make sure you have a lot of token, producers in your aristocrats deck.
But, that doesn't happen. That's something people don't play enough. Token generators in aristocrat decks. I'm kidding. Nobody take that seriously whatsoever.
Something that I know that I've neglected sometimes in my token decks are overrun effects. Like I'll only put like one, maybe two. Like I'll put like Craterhoof and Triumph of the Hordes, and then that's it. And every time I draw one of those cards, I'm like, oh man, this is so good. And then I don't put any more. I only just have two.
You don't even run Garrick?
Which Garrick? The
loudspeaker.
With the ultimate for that?
Yeah.
I guess I could, but I tend to kind of shy away from planeswalkers unless I'm going like dedicated planeswalker. Like
why?
Super so you're just bad at Magic. Got it.
I mean, he's not bad though.
I stay away from these super powerful cards in Magic.
There you go. That's what we
they
don't
die
see
so fast in multiplayer.
It doesn't matter then. So what does Garruk enter with? 3, right?
I don't know. I'll have to take a look.
He enters with 3, and then his +1 puts him up to 4. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're almost always going to +1 because that's the untapped 2 lands.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, this is 2 mana, gain 4 life. That's what this says.
Is it worth it to gain 4 life though?
2
Sometimes
mana,
I feel like
gain 4 life.
Yeah, there's a 2 mana spell that gains you 7 life.
And there are plenty of times I've played a Garrick and he hasn't died.
Yeah, and that's only if he dies immediately. So 2 mana, gain 4 life, and potentially more life if he sticks around, or maybe get a beast token if he sits around, or maybe kill somebody when you overrun.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he's bad. It's just that I've found that even when I play a planeswalker, even if I have like some protection on the battlefield, people who are planning on not attacking suddenly start planning to attack into the Garrick. So it's not like I'm gaining life because they weren't planning on attacking me. They were not planning on attacking at all, and then they saw the planeswalker and they're like, "Oh, gotta get rid of that," So that's just at least how I attack you. Do what?
You don't know they weren't going to attack you. You don't.
Yeah, you have a very attackable face.
That's the damn truth. We've been sitting on this call for 46 minutes, and I wanted to do nothing but reach through this microphone.
Man, why do I put up with this abuse, guys? Why do I do this?
Because we don't pay you. I mean, wait, hold on. That was the opposite thing. I think that would actually be something. I don't know. I don't see as many planeswalkers as I'm always surprised when I don't see as many planeswalkers because I purposely pull my planeswalker cards aside so that I can always look through them when I'm building a deck and basically go which ones work with what I'm trying to do. So if I'm running tokens in black or black white I should say, the Sorens will work. Some of the Lavinias will work. A lot of the white ones will work. The white Elspeths will work, or Orajani for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't even have to be like super hardcore part of the strategy, but they're typically pretty strong cards. Even some of the crappier like Planeswalker deck ones are okay-ish. If obviously you don't have the one that came in the set, which is typically a better version, but you know, whatever. I don't judge people for having bad cards. I have many.
Well, you just judge people for having bad opinions, right?
Yes.
Yes.
If your opinion's bad, you should feel bad.
So DP Cross here says lower your curve and kill people faster than with hoof. That's definitely something that I think a lot of people. I mean, I'm not saying that lowering your curve is wrong. I just feel like the game ends in the late game where 8 mana is not a big deal, you know. But yeah, I
maybe the way you play it. For me, the game ends on turn 6 to 8.
If I haven't won turn 6 to 8, I'm probably gonna lose.
If you're waiting to get to 8 mana, sir, you might not get that chance.
It's not really waiting in green. But yeah, what's the next thing you guys don't see enough of in either in your decks or in other people's decks?
Well, Phyrexian's going last. I forget why we made him go last, but he hasn't gone for whatever.
I haven't actually started a topic. I've just talked about your topic.
I know. That's why I'm drawing attention to it now, so you can do it. Please go. Thank you very much.
I think DM got 2 topics in a row, actually. You talked about card drive, then graveyard hate.
Well, I'm the host, so.
But anyway,
try to get to your thing.
So my thing would be land.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
There are so many people who, because I want this cool thing, and I want this cool thing, and I just can't decide what to cut. Well, I'll just cut this land. You know, and before you know it, like it's a dangerous little slippery slope of before you know it, you were running 38, like you probably should, and then all of a sudden you're running 34, 35 because you're like, I need all these cool things, and then not only not running land, but their mana bases aren't well crafted, even if they're running enough. Like they don't have the right balance. Yeah. You know, like they don't have the right balance of swamps to plains, or they don't have the right balance of utility to non-utility. Just mana producing lands. So I just find like people's mana bases, both ways, lack like in terms of having enough land, and then also in terms of the way they design their mana bases. So you see people and they're like, oh gosh, I'm stuck with all this blue mana. It's like, well, all I've seen you play is islands. And it's like, and you really need a plains. How many white sources are you running in this deck? As opposed to how many white sources are in the converted mana cost of the cards in your deck.
58.
You're complaining about the 5 white cards in your hand and all you played is islands. I mean, it could be bad luck because sometimes that'll happen, you know. Yeah. You can have a deck with 38 lands or 40 lands that for whatever reason MTGO decides not to give you any lands. But a lot of times is a sign of an underlying issue with the way you've constructed the mana base.
So DP Cross asks, and I'm pointing this toward you, Phyrexian, because it's your topic, but what is your optimal land count?
My optimal land count tends to be 38 in general. I do tend to go down if a deck is running like elves or something that's running like a lot of low ramp, like a lot of ramp in the 1 or 2 slot. And I also tend to go down if the converted mana cost is really, really low. Like if your converted mana cost is like my Shram deck, I only run 36 lands in Shram because the converted mana cost is 2.1.
Yeah, your curve is.
So my curve is so low that I don't need that many lands to be successful. So you can run less, but usually 38, give or take. Yeah, and Jiggles is given a pretty good 40 or more for like land-based decks or control decks is not bad. 38 is pretty good in general for your mid-range combo decks, and then 35 and sometimes less He says 12 for elves, though. That's not true.
No, so that's based
Drop
on
down to 32.
that's based on a joke though, where Danny was running apparently 29 lands in our deck, her elf deck, and she still was realistically, or not, she was consistently killing at least one person at the table before like people obviously ganged up because that was super scary. But yeah, 29 lands in elves, and
Wow.
she killed people. It was the most frustrating thing ever. As a person who's pretty good at math and knowing how like statistics works and averages, I like would always be like, this shouldn't happen. You shouldn't, like, yeah, you should be able to get those games in, but it shouldn't happen as often as it does, and I'm upset that it does.
And yeah, I see a lot of people running 36 in like every deck, and they get stuck on that rule of thumb. And it really is like, it really does, like with so many other things about deck construction, we talk about how, well, whether you include this card or that card depends on what your deck's trying to do. Like whether you'd include Eternal Witness versus a regrowth effect depends on what your deck's trying to do and like what capabilities you have.
Yeah. I have a
And
question.
we talk about that with other cards, but we don't talk about it with the mana base. So a lot of times with the mana base, it does depend. What is your deck trying to do? If your deck's way more aggro, run less probably. If it's if it's mid range, I'd say you're looking 37, especially especially in 3H, because we get stuck on this like 36, 36, 36, but especially in 3H, I'll run 38 or more in every deck just because you don't have all the fast mana, you don't have, your good untapped lands and stuff like that to fall back on. So it's even more important that you actually make those land drops and find those lands.
So I do have a question in terms of, because we were talking about ramp a little bit. Does the kind of ramp that your deck use also change whether your land count goes up or down? And what I mean by that is obviously green is good at finding the land and bringing it out of your deck, whereas let's say blue is not necessarily finding land; it's finding you ramp with mana rocks in blue. Same thing.
You ramp with card draw in blue too. You just make sure you don't miss your land drops.
Well, yeah,
in
but
blue,
you
you also ramp with card draw by making sure, ensuring I'm drawing enough cards, I'm gonna have enough lands that I don't miss a land drop for the first 9-10 turns.
So with that in mind, is it okay to run fewer lands? Or do you still want to run the same amount of lands? Because even though you're going to draw into them, rocks are, destructible.
Yeah, I think you still want to run the same amount. Even in green decks, when my ramp is a lot of times in green decks, I'm running the rampant growths and Farseeks and cultivates and stuff like that to go find, lands out of the deck. I'm still running as many lands just because you need to get to 2 or 3 to do that. Right.
The reason why I ask that is because I've seen people who do run blue decks basically say that, well, I'm running X amount of rocks, so I don't, like, my rocks are taking place of my lands. And every time they do that, I look at them and I'm like, but so what do you do when somebody hits you with the Bane of Progress and half your mana on the field is in rocks? And sure, you could draw into more lands because you're probably going to draw more than other people because you're the blue deck, but what happens, because you still only get one land per turn. So the green deck that has put down 2 at least lands per turn because he puts his land drop and then he cultivates, which means he's now got another land for next turn when he's going to hit Kadama's Reach after that, etc., etc. So how do you now keep up with him? Because he just hit you with the Bane of Progress, and like 8 of your 16 mana was, Thran Dynamo and Hedron Archive and Soul Ring and etc. And they just kind of look at me and it's like, oh, that doesn't really happen, or oh, I'm going to counter. I'm like, okay, and what happens when you don't have a counter in your hand or you're tapped out?
Mm-hmm. You got to counter something to the turn before.
Yeah, because like the whole like I'm always going to have an answer mentality is probably the most frustrating thing I face in Magic. Whenever like you play a game and somebody's like, oh, well, I had the answers. Like, you don't know how the turn was going to play out. I have answers in my hand a lot of times when I lose games, but I never say, oh, I had it. I'm saying I had the potential maybe to do it, but it depends on how the turn's going to turn out. It depends on what everybody else is going to do. One turn of Magic in Commander is, there's so many variables. You can't.
It can change very fast.
Yeah. So when 2 people start going back and forth about what they could have done, yeah, you're narrowing it down, but you're also forgetting about the variables, which I think it's exponential, right? The more players you add, it's exponentially more possibilities. So I tell people the safest thing to do is still run the same amount of lands. That's what I say.
I think that you have to have a reasonable limit to the number of non-land cards you're mana base. Because if you have Expedition Map, I mean, what's the difference between that and a land? You're gonna go and crack it and get a land. So drawing that off the top of your deck is like drawing a land. So you might as well include it into the deck. Because if you don't, your deck will, and your math is gonna be a little off, I think. So
There's a lot of difference between drawing an Expedition Map and a land.
well, yeah, you have 3 mana
Expedition
less.
Map is Expedition Map is 1 mana to play, 2 mana to do, and then it gets to the land to put into your hand. So
and it's counterable and it's destroyable, etc., etc.
I mean, if someone's countering a Expedition Map, I mean, what kind of game is that?
I would counter a mono black Expedition Map if I didn't have anything better to do.
That I can see. If you're
gonna go get
deck,
Cabal Coffers, or if you already have Urborg or Cabal Coffers, if you're gonna go get the other one, no, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd rather you waste more resources trying to either draw into it or tutor it up again or blah blah
That's
blah.
That's a good point.
Exactly.
Is it weird that I've never seen that happen? I've never seen anyone counter my Expedition Map in a black deck while I was playing black.
Because there's usually scarier things out there. There's usually, but I mean, again, if you're ahead as the blue deck, I probably don't want you to get. I don't want you to suddenly have more mana than me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe people aren't just playing enough counterspells. Maybe that's one of the things people don't play enough of. Because I feel like
I'll agree with that statement because the social contract is such in Commander that people don't want to.
Are we talking about social contract and things we don't do because of it? Because I'm all over this topic. You ready? We're about to have a whole nother hour, guys.
I mean, think about it though. Like, what's the difference between a counterspell and a Swords to Plowshares? They're kind of similar, except one can hit anything and one can hit just creatures. I mean, let's say you say negate. All right, that one can't hit creatures, but Swords to Plowshares can. So, is there a big difference?
I don't think so. Can the Swords to Plowshare? If you really want to know what I think the difference is you get more thought to what you're doing. The counterspell, you have to basically weigh the pros and cons right now. Mm-hmm. You don't get another chance to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. The Swords to Plowshare, you could typically sandbag it until the right moment.
Yeah, until someone attacks you with that creature.
Well, also, another difference in the Swords to a counterspell is if I'm playing a Runescar Demon, I'd rather see a Swords than a counterspell.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Anything with an ETB would rather see a Swords to Plowshares or like removal once it hits the battlefield.
Yeah.
Removal as it's coming into the play.
Right, but either way, they're both removal. They're both answers.
They are both answers in a way, but one answers everything, and the other answers
only the
big
body. Yeah.
It answers my big 6/6 body after I've already gone and tutored up the card that I really wanted. That's going to actually help me faster than the big 6/6 body will, because most of the time Commander games do not end with I'm going to beat you in the face with this 6/6 flyer for 5 or 6 turns. I'm going to overrun and kill you in 1 turn with a Triumph of the Hordes, or I'm going to, I'm going to do something like that. I'm not going to sit there and go, boop. Okay, you ready for it? Here it comes again. Boop. It's not limited. It's not standard. It's not one of those formats where that's the way you're going to win.
Listen here, you. Sometimes I like just beating people in the face. So let me put it into another example or perspective. If you're running mono blue and one of your combos is Paradox Engine and you cast Paradox Engine but you're tapped out, so you don't have another thing to cast. Like you have 2 mana obviously, but you don't have a 2 mana spell in your hand except for counterspell. And somebody pulls out a Reclamation Sage. Would you rather have counterspell or would you rather have?
Oh, for sure the counterspell. But exactly. I meant like in terms of what's the difference in terms of why people don't like it? I mean, either way, you lose a card.
Counterspells they just shut off more.
Yeah, they tell you no to everything.
They tell you no to everything, and like in particular, like you said, negate is you're trying to like. But I mean, in most non-3DH decks, I wouldn't run negate as one of my counterspells. Like. I wouldn't even run it. I wouldn't run a counter that doesn't counter everything in most of my non-3DH decks. Now, in 3DH decks, I have 3DH decks that run negate because your options are more limited because of cost. But I think most times that counterspell just can counter anything. And it's like, I have counterspell, right? Just counterspell. I can literally pick my place to counter anything that you try to do, whether it's countering your board wipe that's about to destroy my entire field and keep me from killing you, whether it's countering your, Paradox Engine is coming down on the field, that's your way to win, or your Aetherflux Reservoir, any number of other cards I can counter. Whereas, like, cards, that's another card, like Aetherflux Reservoir. If they have over 50 life and it comes down,
it's too
unless
late.
you get a Croson Grip, it's too
Yeah.
You've got that one out to it other than counter spells. There's so many cards that have one out, like in the actual creature removal, permanent removal sphere.
Yeah.
And then counter spells an out to all of them. Because it never comes into play. It never happens.
So you guys
the
know
one
how
card
there's
I think that gets around it is Approach to the Second Sun because it says on cast.
Right.
Things that have on cast triggers or Prosh that's like, oh, I still get all because it's cast triggers. So cast triggers kind of get around counter spell. Anything else, you're better off. You're better off with a counter spell than like targeted removal.
New Simic Jellyfish. Jellyfish's Revelation.
Hydroid? Yeah, Hydroid Creases. Now like $30 since Saffron Auto did a video with it.
Yeah. All right. Real quick to answer somebody in chat, Dr. Away Odd says, what is this 3DH? 3DH is a version of Commander we play on Magic Online. Because of the way the economy works, you're able to build an entire Commander deck for 3 tickets, which is essentially $3 or less sometimes. And we basically stream the games every Wednesday and Friday. So 3DH is $3 Highlander, where you still get to play really powerful things. Vampiric Tutor's a penny. What's another really good one that's like 2 cents?
Sylvan Tutor.
Sylvan Tutor. There you go. Yeah. So it's a cheap way to play Commander online.
Or Sylvan Library, or lots of things. Survivor of the Fittest.
Yeah, 1 ticket Highlander. So the way 3DH started, we were actually playing. Me and Jeremy Knoll were playing 1 ticket Highlander. I wanted to play Rishkar, which was 60 cents at the time, and I said, "Hey, what would you say if I said, let's bump it up to 3 tickets instead of 1 ticket, and we can call it 3DH because 3DH sounds like EDH." And from there, it's been over a year, and we're still playing it. So, if you join the Discord, you can actually see the spreadsheet that we use to price the decks and everything, and also talk to some people who you can.
Mine was first.
Oh, okay, cool. I don't know, not on mine. Mine says that I hit it first.
Mine says that Praetor Magic hit it first too, but I was gonna.
Mine shows first. Why is mine showing mine
first? It's 2 against 1. You suck.
Everyone, back me up. Say it was me first. Even if it's a lie.
I do want to say there's one more thing I thought of.
Help me out. I need this.
There's one more. I need this. There's one more thing I thought of that people don't run enough of, and that's, I know that because we said the social contract thing is land removal. People are not blowing up lands nearly enough, and you don't have to do mass land destruction. I get that people don't like it. You're wrong, but that's fine. And again, I don't like it, but the fact that nobody runs it because everybody doesn't like it, you're wrong. But whatever. You have to be able to hit those lands. Like, there is a legal cheap Gaia's Cradle. There's a legal cheap Tolarian Academy that's very easy to get to. There's the Cabal Coffers and this isn't in 3DH, but there's Cabal Coffers and Urborg. There's for Voltron decks, there's Maze of Ith. There's all these lands that do all these crazy things, and like lands are almost spells sometimes. And we have no way of dealing with them a lot of times, and that blows my mind. I forget every once in a while to run my own personal ones, but like Ghost Quarter, Strip Mine, Tectonic Edge, Field of Ruin, those are the ones I can rattle off. Wasteland, those are the ones I can rattle off the top of my head. And there's a bunch others.
Oh yeah.
Run ways to get rid of lands.
Yeah.
DP Cross, I'll leave your coffers alone if I can play my Vesuva and copy it.
Thespian Stage?
And Thespian Stage. I got both. I'll use both.
I still wouldn't leave it alone.
Yeah, right? Just because I also have a thing doesn't mean I still want you to have the thing.
Like, I just copy it and then be like, okay, now I'm going to blow it up.
Exactly.
Now blow it up.
Yeah, exactly. I still don't want you to have it.
Hey, man, I'm with you on that one.
There is...
Copy it first. Okay, I've copied it. Now we're good. Let's blow it up.
There is, for everybody who doesn't know, in every game of Magic, there's a finite amount of fun, which means a not infinite amount of fun. There's only so much to go around. There's 100 hats worth of fun, and I want to have it all.
So DP Cross here said, it was Red Deck Try says, if you don't want to blow up lands, you're always welcome to just give them lots of mountains. 3+ color decks will thank you for Blood Moon. I promise. Maybe that's one of the cards. I know it's an expensive card, but Magus of the Moon isn't nearly as expensive. It's only $5 in paper. Back to Basics, I know is expensive. I wish it was less expensive personally, but unfortunately, it's
I
not.
mean, Blood Moon is a way of grave hate. I'm not grave hate, land hate. It's not removal, but it is a way of hating. But seriously, like, people need to be able to deal with these high-powered utility lands. How many times has people, like, I play Growing Rights of Itlamok, which is essentially Gaia's Cradle, and I have gone off with it in games. I can't tell you how many times I've flipped it and won. I've flipped it and lost, but I think I've flipped it and won a lot more often. I can't tell you how many freaking times that stupid Storm the Vault turns into Tolarian Academy and the stupid Joyride deck that went crazy when she became legal, and everybody just went the hell off. And I'm angry about it.
Oh, this is too great. I feel like I've seen the same thing. I've seen Glacial Chasm really just end the game. Like, nobody can deal with it. They've got that Crucible of Worlds. They're getting it back every turn. Like, it's hard to deal with stuff. So in those situations, you need to have like a Blood Moon effect in order to like stop them from being able to do stuff like that.
Or targeted removal. Strip mine them with a Crucible of Worlds in a Muldrotha deck, and make sure I'm sorry, hold on. I went down a very dark path here. The Storm Vault thing got me. Storm the Vaults, and I'm going out of control here. But that's all right.
I just think that there's a lot of these cards that people could be running. You know, if you're playing red, you know, play some of those cards. Maybe you're a 2-color deck. I think it's still okay to play a Ruination or two.
I don't think, unless you're running budget, like, because I don't know what it costs right now, but unless, like, in 3DH it's too expensive, I don't think there's ever a reason not to run Strip Mine. At least.
Yeah.
And I do, like, on every one of my Magic Online Commander League, if you go through all my lists, I have Strip Mine, and I probably have Tectonic Edge in it, even though it's probably because Phyrexian reminded me that I needed to put Tectonic Edge in it. But I do run it eventually.
And in my 3DH decks, I tend to put, like, unless I have a very good reason not to, I put Ghost Quarter and Tectonic Edge in, like, almost every one.
Yeah.
And my very good reason not to is I already have other ways to deal with lands other than, and I already have too many utility land slots.
Yeah. It sucks that you give them something, but it's budget, right? Like, you're already playing budget answers and other things like that anyway, so just suck it up and deal with it. But you have to do it.
And there are times where you can Ghost Quarter yourself for good effect.
I've done it.
Yeah.
I've Ghost Quartered a land in my... Oh, what deck was it? Oh, no. I think it was my Lord Windgrace deck. Yeah! I have Ghost Quartered myself in my Lord Windgrace deck while I had Gitrog out to draw 2 cards and get the Landfall trigger.
I've done it in Tachova and stuff like that. Like, I've definitely done
that's a good one too. Yeah.
There's definitely times where you get enough extra advantage that's worth doing it to yourself, or there's times where you're like, hey, you're in that situation where you're missing one of your 3 colors and you draw your Ghost Quarter and it's like, hey, I can blow up this 3rd swamp I don't need to go get that plains I really do need. Yep. So Ghost Quarter has other utilities other than just blowing up troublesome lands that people kind of ignore.
Yeah.
All right, we're actually gonna start wrapping up. We've been going for about 54-ish minutes, so.
Ooh, we're actually gonna get done in under an hour?
I know, I've actually.
I have more to say.
No, you don't.
What is this? Sir, shut it.
I say my best category for last.
No, you didn't. The last thing we are going to end with is that something we've been talking about doing every once in a while, maybe once a month-ish, is basically doing these podcasts, and instead of doing like a topic, we would like look at a deck and kind of either brew around the concept or kind of like pick a deck apart a little bit and then like try to improve upon it, something like that. So the original idea was that we would supply our own decks, but I think one of you two had the good idea of asking the fans.
That's right. Phyrexian had that great idea of asking you, the people.
Oh, no. Well, anyway, Phyrexian figured we could ask you guys if you guys want to basically have your deck appear on the podcast so that we could talk about it. We would talk about, obviously, things that we like, if we see things that we don't like or that don't make sense to us, and maybe, who knows, we'll learn some things like picking through the deck and trying to figure stuff out. But we can do that for future ones. You guys just have to send us deck lists. You could do it via the Discord. You could also do it, if you really want to, send us like links. Please do links Don't send us like text files or anything like that, because that gets kind of unwieldy to use. It's easier if we can see it in a deck builder, so deck stats, tapped out, MTG Goldfish, or whatever else your thing is that you like. Just don't send us just like a list that we don't know every card in the world, and it's just going to take more time if we have to look up every card in your list. It's easier if you just supply it to us in a way where the site does a lot of the work.
Or you
So,
can
Seth,
send
I
it
can't
on
send you a-
MTGO with a 5-tick donation attached.
Oh
So
god,
move
I
you
did
right
not
to the
endorse
top of the
that.
list there. Weak. That's a
I
joke,
did
of
not
course, but-
endorse that whatsoever. You can also email them to us at praetormagic@gmail.com. That's fine too. Again, still just provide the link, or you could DM them to us. We're all on Discord, which is the only way you can find Phyrexian Walker, because last I checked, he didn't have any social media because he's the hidden.
I still don't.
Now, Seth, can we send you a link to a picture of a handwritten deck list, some of the cards in shorthand that aren't spelled right and stuff like that? That
So
sounds like a
normally
good link,
this
right?
time is for Hacker to plug his content, but since he won't be back next Monday, that's not necessary. You can find us on Hacker. Do you want to supply us with your crappy resources and your crappy face?
Well, I only have one link this time. I cut it all down. So all you gotta go to is check out my tapped out page, tappedout.net/mtg-users/magical hacker, all one word. Go there, you'll see my YouTube, my Twitch, my Twitter, all that stuff. You'll see my commander resources. It's all there. And right now it's being built, so I'm working on getting it to look pretty, making sure all the decks are updated, so doing all that stuff. But yeah, one of the categories I wanted to talk about that I didn't get to is Neo Tuck. So you'll see that on my page there.
I don't even know what that means.
Neo Tuck. Remember the old Tuck rule? You could tuck commanders and get rid of them, so you won't have to deal with their commander anymore.
I didn't want you to explain it. I just wanted to make a statement. Hacker's gonna be here next week. I was just alluding to the fact that we are firing him again, which we actually didn't do this episode, so he's got like 2 more minutes to screw it up. For us, you can find us on twitch.tv/PraetorMagic for those of you listening to the podcast or video versions of this later on. YouTube.com/PraetorMagic is where all these videos go, along with our Magic Online Commander League episodes that we've been talking about, where me, Valdor, Danny, and John basically play Commander in like a series of 10 episodes per season. We're in our 2nd season. We just had episode 6 go by. It was pretty fun. It took forever because John built me a control deck, and I don't know how to play Azorius Control whatsoever. And I cut out like 20 minutes of me just like looking at what do I do. You can also find us on twitter.com/PraetorMagic, facebook.com/PraetorMagic, and instagram.com/PraetorMagic. Of course, if you go over to inkedgaming.com, you can use our Praetor10 coupon code to get 10% off. That also supports us because we are affiliated with them. We are still running our donation goals, so if you go to streamlabs.com/PraetorMagic and donate there, you are helping us get to our our Ultimate Masters unboxing giveaway. So we're raising the funds to be able to buy the box, and whoever the highest donator gets the box topper. And then last month we were doing a playmat giveaway. We just had the winner for that. I haven't talked to Ink Gaming if we could do that again this month, but we'll see where that's going. Right now I just want to get the tracking information for the winner from last month. And I believe that's it. Oh, you can find us also, as far as podcasts go, on LibSyn, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and something else that I can't remember.
All the things.
But just look for Praetor Magic or Reflections of the Council. So, and then we'll be streaming Wednesday 3DH and Friday 3DH. This upcoming Friday the 8th is the beginning of Season 4 of 3DH. We're going to have a new spreadsheet. It's going to look pretty much the same because nobody's giving me any ideas on what to change or improve upon. So the colors are going to be a little different. And the data is going to be new. So we get to build all new decks. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And I think that's all I got for you guys. Any last words? No, there are no last words. Everybody's
I'm good.
Everybody's dead.